suspect most of you, if not all of you, have applied for this year's Mes Entrepreneur Award. Super excited to hear more about your ideas and see which of those go through to the semi-finals. So good luck to all of you who have applied. But over the course of this afternoon, we're going to be thinking about what that next stage on your journey might look like, and in particular, how to turn your idea into a prototype or an MVP. I'll explain a bit more about what that means in a moment. And then also your routes to market. So when you have that product, how you can actually take that into the world and launch it in front of your customers. So a bit about me. I know a lot of you already, but in cases this is your first workshop, my name's Ed. My background is in a mixture of education and entrepreneurship. What I love doing is working with people like you guys who are kind of in the early stages of developing exciting new ideas and help to make them happen. So over the last 5 years, I've helped to build an education social enterprise in Colombia, which now employs about 40 people and has scaled up across the country and is working with thousands of young people to educate them around social emotional learning. I spent 3 years running the Startup Accelerator at King's College London, where I was coaching and mentoring about 65 early stage entrepreneurs in cancer diagnostics through to ethical fashion, through to agricultural supply chains. And then now I'm the UK country manager for an education startup that teaches kids and young people how to create exciting stuff using technologies like video game design, robotics, virtual reality, and artificial intelligence. And so for those of you who have been to previous workshops, over the last few weeks, we've covered a whole bunch of stuff, including customer discovery, so the kind of anthropological side of startup development and understanding your customer, who they are and what their needs are. And then the second step around your value proposition, so how you understand and interpret your customer needs and build the product that they need, and particular with the benefits that your customers are looking for. But today we're going to be looking at a whole bunch of super creative tools to help take those ideas forward. So we're going to be exploring what a minimum viable product is, and in particular looking at 3 different types of MVP. An app design using a really cool tool called Marvel. Second, landing page using a tool called Card. And then third, video production using an amazing video editor called Veed. And if we have time at the end, I'm also going to talk about how you build a community of customers who are engaged with your product, and then the steps that I recommend you guys taking when you go to actually launch your product into the market. So at this point, to explain the kind of context here, these are broadly the 4 stages of building a startup. As I've mentioned before, a startup is basically taking a hypothesis and testing that hypothesis with your customers to prove that there is a demand enough to turn that idea into a really successful business. So we started with the first stage, customer discovery. Then the next stage is customer validation. So looking at how you build and test ideas, and that's kind of where the MVP comes in today. And then the third step is customer creation. So how you actually create value by launching your ideas to an engaged group of customers. Then the fourth step, company building, is something further down the line, but hopefully by the end of this afternoon, we'll have covered off points across the first 3 of these stages. So what's the next step for your idea now that you guys have applied for this year's awards? So these are the steps that I recommend that you go through. They are sometimes chronological, but actually these steps often kind of happen in parallel with each other. So number 1, to build and test and refine the ideas you have using this idea of a minimum viable product. The second is to build a database of customers, and this is typically by collecting their emails. And I cannot stress enough how important this stage is. With every customer interview, survey, focus group, you've been collecting customer contact details, and that will help you build this community of customers that you can eventually launch your product in front of. The third step is taking that forward. So to create what I've called a pre-product community of value for customers. So even before your product exists, before you've built your marketplace, your app, whatever your product might be, you can create a mailing list, a Slack group, a Discord channel, meetups, events, but essentially create a community for your customers where they can interact with the kind of value you want to provide for them. So if you're developing an app around mental health for students, you could actually start by creating a mailing list for students in London, and every month sending out a curated list of events around mental health, recommended blogs or reading, or recommended tools or applications they can use to help solve that challenge way before your product exists. Then fourth, the last step, to actually launch your product to this captive audience that the first few steps have helped you build. And to kind of bring that to life, I've actually created a template database for you guys to use. So hopefully you can see my screen here. And this is a very basic, what is called a CRM, so customer relationship management system, where you can just dump all of the details of customers or potential customers that you've spoken to. First name, last name, their organization, job title, email, then contact type. There's a few different options. So customer, journalist, partner, supplier, etc. And then a status. So how far along that communication you have got with them. So I'm going to take this and paste that into the chat now. That is for you guys to use as you see fit. It's very much a prototype database, but Google Sheets is essentially free. So it's a very quick way for you to get started. So use that as a place, a central place to store all of those details of people that you've been in touch with who might want to use your product when it's launched. So now we are going to go very quick pace through what an MVP is and looking at 3 different types of MVP. So the idea of a minimum viable product is often misunderstood. To explain what it is essentially the fastest, quickest, cheapest means of replicating the experience of your final product. And so if your product is to get someone from point A to point B, in your mind, you might want to build a car. But to build a car, you need hundreds of thousands, if not millions of pounds of research and development, a whole factory, a whole team, etc. So you could start with a wheel and then build a chassis and then build a body around that chassis. And then eventually, in a few years' time, you have your car. But the problem with the example at the top is that you don't have an opportunity to test and learn and feedback from your customers at every single stage, which exposes you to a huge amount of risk, because you might spend all of that money on research and development, you go out to market, and actually no one likes that car design, style, whatever it is. But in the second example, again, we're testing how to get a customer from point A to point B. You can start with a skateboard, costs you 30 quid on Gumtree, then a scooter, a bicycle, motorbike, and then finally to a car. But the difference here is that at every stage, you have a product with an increasing level of complexity that you can test with your users. So an example about this that I love is Dropbox. I'm sure you guys have all come across this product. They revolutionized how we store and share files using a cloud-based system. But they thought this process of using portable hard drives or local area networks was broken, but they didn't want to spend all of the time and money building that product before they had tested that there was demand. So instead, they produced actually a very rough and ready animated video explaining what Dropbox did, or actually what it was going to do in the future. And they pushed that out through Reddit, Facebook, Twitter, etc., with an email sign-up form saying, watch this video if you're interested in finding out about this product, sign up. and they got 100,000 people signed up, even before the product had existed. And that meant that when they went to pitch to Y Combinator, which is probably the leading startup accelerator in the world, they said, well, we don't have a product yet, but we have 100,000 customers biting our arm off for this product, waiting for it to be released. So they got into that program, and the rest is history. So another great example is this guy called Ben Tossell, who's a real kind of hacker and product designer who proved that you can build a whole ton of MVPs in literally 24 hours. So he built 10 in 24 hours. And he explains, why did I do it? To prove that it can be done. Your excuses are bullshit. I did it with no coding, on a budget, and quickly. So in 24 hours, he built an AR tool for personal professional use, a marketplace for artwork created using artificial intelligence, a calculator for valuing crypto assets, a whole bunch of different stuff. So my point here is, if you're trying to think about how you create a material version of your idea, this stuff can be done super easily and super quickly, and actually often for free. So an MVP is all about validating your idea. It's about getting inside your customer's head. That means discovering and validating a problem and finding out whether your proposed solution to that problem is likely to work. So answering questions about how big the problem you're looking to solve is, how painful that problem is for your users, and how many people it might affect. And a great place to start on your product development journey is to look at equivalent products that already exist. As I've mentioned before, we sometimes think that ideas are new and novel, but I would argue that no new idea is completely new. So why not check out what your competitors have done already and what you can learn from that? So here are a few different places where you can get some inspiration for your product. And a great way to do this is to try and really dig into 3 to 5 companies or products that are a little bit like yours, and write down the things that you like about each one of those, and also the things that you don't like and where you could potentially improve. It's a great way to start learning. The first is this community called Product Hunt. Product Hunt is a community for hackers, hipsters, product designers, for basically sharing and testing and getting feedback on their new ideas. And you can search for a ton of different products on there. Beta List is a similar community that I definitely recommend you checking out. You can get onto their mailing list and see new products that are being launched. And then finally, Republic is a crowdfunding platform where you can find some of the ideas that have got the most funding in your space. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to pause, see if there's any questions coming through. So there was a question about GDPR impact on your contact database. So when you do collect customer emails, make sure you have a tick box that has GDPR compliance on it. When you ask for someone's email, they're actually selecting to join your mailing list to make sure you're compliant with the GDPR regulations. Okay, so let's get into some app design. So we're going to go very quickly through 3 different tools, and hopefully I'll have some space at the end of the session to answer your questions. But we're going to start off with app design. And you guys can actually follow along with this process as I do it live on screen. And the first thing I'd like you to do is launch this link here, launchaco.com/logo. So I'm going to put this in the chat. And what I love about this tool is it is a super, super quick way of creating a logo, which helps bring to life your startup idea. So let's say I'm building a app to help connect lonely old people with their loved ones. So my app is going to be called Old Friends. Type of business it's essentially a social app. And then here I can choose fonts that I like to bring to life my brand. I like this one, I like this one, I think I like this one, this one, this one, and then one more. And then here I can choose my color palette. I like this cheerful one. Click on that, old friends. Then I can add a slogan. Connecting loved ones everywhere. So I'm kind of doing this on the fly here, but just to show you how this tool works, I can search for an icon. And so I typed in old to reflect my user base. And I'm going to choose maybe this guy. And then I can go continue with one icon. And here we go. Here are...
I think your screen's frozen again because we're just on the slides.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, thanks for letting me know. Let's try this again. Can you see that now?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, let me run through this again. So you go on to Namecheap, which I posted in the chat, and type in the name of your application and the type of business, and then you choose the fonts here that you like, and you've got 6 different options. You just click through, keep clicking through, and then choose a color palette. This cheerful one I like, and then you can write in a slogan if you want, connecting loved ones everywhere, and then choose an icon. So I'm going to choose this old guy, continue with one icon, and then here we go. Hopefully it's yes. Okay, it's created in 15 seconds a whole bunch of potential logos that I can use in my application. So to download those, I can click on the one that I like, and then in the bottom left, click download. And there we go. That is now downloading those files to my hard drive. And now to jump back into my slides. Now to think about how you go about designing an app. An app is basically a platform that helps a user achieve a goal or a series of goals. So you really need to understand what the number one goal of your app is. So for example, in mine, the goal of my app is for elderly people who are not technologically literate to be able to seamlessly connect with their friends and family through voice over internet protocol. So kind of video enabled call. And then the next step is to put together what's called an app flow. And what's great about this is that you can use this very simple pen and paper and basically write out some boxes more or less in the shape of a phone screen. And then each of these boxes are basically going to represent a different screen on the application. With all of the apps that we use each day, there are different screens that take us through this journey to achieve the goal of the application. So typically it starts with a welcome screen, then a sign up or a sign in button, and then a home screen where you can choose the next step on that journey. You might be pushed through to choose a product or a service, and then to purchase something, or it might be all sorts of different functionalities. But this is your chance to essentially map out that app flow to have a really clear understanding of what your app is going to look like. In pen and paper, it means that whole process is super quick. So here is an example of what an app flow can look like. So 8 very simple pen and paper boards to take you through the journey of the app. The next step is to get some inspiration. So learn from people who've already done this, because why not? That's how you can make your idea better. There's an apocryphal quote from Picasso that says, good artists copy and great artists steal. Whether or not he said that, I think we can learn a lot from that. And so if you want to find some good examples of app design, you can look at these 2 links that I've included, mobilepatterns.com and reallygoodux.io. And here is an app that I use that I really like, which is a meditation app called Calm. And so here are some screenshots from the app to give me some inspiration. So now I'd like you guys to all actually get onto the Marvel platform and follow through with me so you can actually create a project. And I'm going to show you just how quick and easy it is for you to create. Okay, so this is Marvel. It is an awesome platform for very quickly prototyping apps, websites, and basically creating a clickable version of the app without using any code at all, so that when you go to actually use an agency or some developers for building that app, you basically have a very clear understanding of what that app is. And most of all, it gives you a platform to actually taking this out to your customer base and testing their response to it. So on this free version, you can only create one project for free at one time. So I've deleted my old one and I'm going to create a new project. So in the top right here, it says create project. I'm going to click on this and then click prototype. And here I'm going to type in the name of the project, which is Old Friends, and choose, let's say, iPhone 8. I'm going to build this for an iPhone 8, then create project. Here on the next screen, ignore these two options below and instead click Add Images. And then on here, select Design in Marvel. Then it should launch this screen. And basically, this is your platform where you can get really creative very quickly to build different stages of that app flow that you've just sketched out in pen and paper in a matter of minutes. So if you look in the left-hand navigation, there's a whole bunch of different tools for designing your app. The first is like a colored box. So I could use this for creating a colored banner. I was using a kind of like orangey color palette. So on the right-hand side in the design tools, I can click, choose orange. You can change size, positioning, etc. A whole bunch of different stuff. The next is a circle, exactly the same, but just a different shape. There's also some text. So here it's added in a text box, which I can then move around. This text is super small, so I want to increase the font size. And let's say I want to create my first screen. And I'm just going to call it, say, welcome. So here's some nice text. You can change the color of the text, all of that stuff on the right-hand side in the design tools. The next is just simply a colored line. Same again, you can drag and drop to create a colored line, change the size if you want, change the color, etc. So now I have a nice line underneath my welcome text. But the most powerful parts of this tool are the two functions at the bottom. So first of all, you can add some stock imagery. So Marvel partner with Unsplash, which is a royalty-free photo database, and you can basically find photos that relate to your particular product. So I'm supporting old people, so I could pick, so I can search for old and then choose a photo that I like this one, and click add, and then here we go. That has added it to my app, and if I wanted to send it to the back, I can just right-click and send to back. Awesome. Okay, this is very quickly coming together. I can also add icons, and so there's a whole database of icons here that I could use for creating like a close screen button with this X. I can add that, put that in the top corner if I want to use that. I can have icons for chat, for links, for all sorts of different stuff. And I can search for the appropriate button by using the search bar. So back, forward, whatever buttons I'm looking for. And even better is this last design tool, which is these 4 purple boxes. You can click on that, and basically you have a whole bunch of presets that make this whole prototyping exercise super, super, super easy. So you can go on here, and as I was saying, the first screen of an app is typically a welcome screen. So if I search for welcome, it's actually got a preset welcome page. Let's try that again. So I can add that in here, and hey presto, I've got a pretty nice looking welcome screen made automatically. I send it to the back, and here we go. My app is really coming alive. Looking pretty nice. I can also at this point go into my hard drive and pick out some of the logos that I've just created on Namecheap. And so here we go. Let's pull out this, and here is my logo for my new application called Old Friends. I can move that around. Anyway, you get the idea. So within 3 minutes, I've got the beginnings of an app prototype. There's a whole bunch of other preset tools on here. It might be like a menu. You have like a menu option here, which is super useful. You can have sign-in pages, all sorts of different stuff. So the next step is to basically create a whole bunch of these different screens very quickly. So to do that, I go into the top right and click close. And I go back to this kind of dashboard view. And what I can do is to keep my design consistent, I can click in the top left of a particular screen and then click copy. And that directly copies that image, which then means I can click again in the top left and say edit design. I can go back into here and it has the same orange header to keep my design consistent, but now I can add a sign-in page. Cool, so I've got my second screen done already. Then I can, again, create another copy of that, and this design, I might want to create a home screen, let's say. So here's a home screen taken from an iPhone 8. Okay, so I now have three designs, mockups for my app flow. And now I want to start bringing this to life. So if I hover over one of these screens, I can click prototype. And this is where you can actually start making this a kind of interactive, clickable prototype. So I click on prototype, and then here I can add hotspots, which are basically turning static images into something that acts like a real button that has code behind it. So I can click and drag over this sign-in button, and that has now made it a hotspot, and I can click through to the next page, and it links those two pages together, and then click close. And then I can do the same thing with the next screen. I can click on prototype, and again, I want to put a hotspot on sign in, and that has made it a hotspot which can click through to my homepage, and then click close. Okay, so this is really coming live now, and to test out how this works, I can press play, and you'll see now that it actually launches in its own screen. This is definitely not my finest design creation, but I'm just doing it very quickly to show you guys how it works. I can click sign in, and it clicks through. So here's the sign in page. I can again click sign in, and I'm through to the home page. So I've got something that you can start interacting with. So what a great way to very quickly bring to life your idea without writing any code. And the coolest thing about this is that if you want to start testing this with people, you can do it on your laptop or whatever, but you can actually share the link. If you click on this share button in the top right, and if you click copy link and send that as a WhatsApp or an SMS, that link, when your friend opens it on their phone or a potential user opens it on their phone, it actually opens that screen as a clickable prototype, meaning you can then go about testing, doing some user testing with your brand new ideas. Okay, so that's MVP1, whistle stop tour. So question here, where did you, okay, someone answered their own questions. Can the assets be exported to be coded afterwards? Yes, absolutely. You can download these as PNGs to send over as design files to potential agency. So that is app design. And remember, you guys will all get a copy of these slides, so you can follow through all of the steps we've taken, but I would really recommend going on Marvel and basically just exploring. There's a ton of great tutorials on YouTube as well, to help you guys get up to speed really quickly. So once you've built this tool, the most important thing about having this MVP is to go and learn from it. So here are some suggested questions that you might want to use to test this with your customers. So first of all, what do you think you can do on this app? What do they think? What role do they think your app serves? Next, describe what the company offers. How clear is your value proposition, branding, messaging, user experience on your app, in conveying actually what your company does? How might you benefit? How might it help a target audience, etc.? And then some more questions. Did you get confused at any point? This is super interesting. Using an MVP is not about being proven right. Quite the opposite. You want to be proven wrong. You want to find as many errors in your assumptions as possible, because those are the points at which you learn. Do you feel like this was designed for you? If you had a magic wand, how would you improve it? And then the last point, how likely are you to recommend this app to a friend or colleague? 1 to 10. What a cool data point to capture as part of your research, to put in a pitch deck, to help prove the demand for this app. If you can say 80% of people, of beta testers who use my clickable prototype would recommend this to a friend, you kind of think there's probably something in this. Whereas if no one said they'd recommend it to a friend, maybe you need to go back to the drawing board and do some figuring out. So the next step here is, once you have this tool on Marvel, which actually I would say you could probably put together in an hour, you can go out and speak to much more than 2 people. I put 2 people here, but it should be 20 people, and just basically test it with them and see what you can learn and document those learnings, importantly. Okay, moving on quickly. So MVP number 2 is a landing page. A landing page is basically a very rudimentary form of website. It's great for testing out new ideas, new hypotheses. In my own company at FireTech, we build and launch landing pages the whole time to test new products. The important thing is that you want to basically test some kind of transaction on that landing page. So how many people come through to the landing page, but even better, how many people, once they're on that landing page, do a particular behavior, watch a video, or most of all, the one I like best is give you their email. Because if someone is making that soft commitment by giving you their email, they are interested enough in your idea to make that commitment, which is really great data point in validating your idea. So there's a ton of tools that you can use for building landing pages. Unbounce is one that's very powerful, but today I'm going to talk about card.co because it's super, super easy to use. So if you guys want to follow along, you can go to carrd.co and start testing it out yourself and follow along as I demo it. So basically, you can get a 7-day free trial without any debit or credit card commitment, and you can choose a starting point. And so here it can push me through to a whole bunch of templates to make this even easier. So I'm going to choose the one in the top left, select. And on here, basically, there is a whole section of different boxes, which are called containers. So each of these you can see here is called a container, and then in each container there are different elements. So if I want to add an element, I can click in this plus button, and I can add text, image, video, buttons, etc. And a really useful element to add, so first of all, on your landing page, you want to explain your value proposition, who you are, what you do, and for whom. Maybe add some of that stock imagery that you found from Unsplash to kind of bring to life your brand. But you basically want to test something here. You guys are scientists at this stage and you want to test your hypothesis. So a great way of doing that is by capturing emails. So here is an element in this container, which is basically a sign up form. So to add one of those, you literally just go add element and then add form. So here we go. This has added another form, and I can click on this form and I can edit it. I can edit the fields. I can edit the design, the column width, spacing, colors, fonts, etc. This is for you guys to basically go and explore around. But the way it works, as I explained, is you have these containers and you want to basically add different elements into these containers. And you can very quickly build landing pages that actually look pretty professional. Then you can save your work in the top right here. And so let's say this is called Old Friends. Description, connecting loved ones everywhere. And then create a URL to actually make this real and publish it. So in this case, I'm just going to use a URL that has the .card.co suffix. So I'm going to see if the Old Friends domain is available. Okay, so now I can literally click publish and it will publish to oldfriends.card.co immediately. If you want to actually have a custom domain, so oldfriends.com or whatever your startup idea or company is called, you can click use custom domain and you put in your domain here and it will basically push you through to a platform where you can buy or register a domain name, which might cost you somewhere around $20, unless it's a very common word where domain names can go up to like thousands of pounds. But that is basically how that works. It's a super easy to use tool, and a great thing to add into your landing page is a type form. So I'm just going to pull up my slides again. So Typeform is a really powerful way of capturing emails and running surveys with your customers. And you can actually go into Typeform using these steps to embed a Typeform directly into your card.co landing page. It basically provides some code for you, which you can literally copy, paste straight into Card. So you don't have to write any of that code yourself. So at this point, we are now 20 to 6. I'm going to do a quick pause to see if there's any questions coming through. How do you get a good response rate for user feedback? So it's a good question. There's a whole approach to signing up users that is successful, and a great thing that I'd recommend. Not describe yourself as an entrepreneur, but to say you're a student doing a research project on, let's say, loneliness in the elderly population. Can I borrow 15 minutes of your time to support this research? And then you go and send out a whole bunch of emails to contacts on LinkedIn and your network, whatever, to sign people up to test out your ideas. And then you basically frame that user testing session by saying, these are the outcomes that I would like from this. This is the process we're going to go through. How does that sound? Okay, let's go ahead. And then you just run through that session together. If you film it on your phone, that's even better, because then you can like take the outcomes away and revisit it. Abigail has asked, is your business perceived as less professional if you use the card domain? I would say, obviously, if you have your own registered domain, it definitely feels professional. But you know, at this earlier stage, startups are rough and ready, right? It's most of all about testing as quickly as possible, rather than fixating about, you know, the relative professionalism of your landing page or website or whatever it is. The whole point about an MVP is that if it's perfect, you've probably waited
too long, much too long to go out and test it. Okay, I'm going to jump back in to my slides and show you this really cool tool around video production. So first of all, what makes a great video? Storytelling is what human beings respond best to, and particularly those that include empathy. The best videos are actually very short and pretty punchy. Our attention spans in 2020 are terrible. So you've got to start strong, hook people in the first 3 seconds, and probably keep it to 60 seconds or less, particularly at this early stage. Use emotion and use subtitles, because often we watch videos at work or in public where we can't have the audio on, and subtitles make sure that you tell the story. If we had more time, I could play this video, which I really love, from Cadbury's. But before you go about making a video, you want to basically synthesize what that video is about and what the goals are. So here I'm talking about a campaign that I want to run, a campaign video promoting a buddy system, matching volunteers with lonely people looking for companions through lockdown. So here you answer these 4 questions. Who is the campaign for? What problems does it address? What are the goals of the campaign? And what will the content be? And I've just drafted out an example of what that video might look like. Then you want to start thinking about your story. So in the same way that you did an app flow for an app design with a promo video, you want to know, almost like a screenwriter, what the story your viewers are going to be taken through. So in this case, I've actually imagined what the subtitles of my footage would look like, and that's how I'm going to tell the story. So the subtitles are: across the UK, millions of elderly people are left isolated by the coronavirus lockdown. Let's remind the elderly people we love that we're here for them. And then included a link to this campaign called Adopt a Grandparent, run by CHD Living. So super simple, super short. It's probably going to be a 10-second video. In terms of getting your content, ideally, you'd actually go out with your smartphone or your pro camera and capture that video. But if you can't do that, we are in lockdown after all, you can actually get some royalty-free video from places like VidEasy, Pixabay, or Cover. So I'm going to open up this link and show you how this works. So you should be able to see on my screen here, I've searched for an old woman and I can pick out a video that I like. So here's a video of this woman looking very thoughtful, maybe suggesting an element of loneliness here. And I can click free download, and that downloads to my hard drive. Awesome. So I already have some stock video that I can use. And then the next step is to go onto this platform called Veed.io. And today we are not going to go through exactly how Veed works, but this is one of the simplest and most easy to use video editing tools that I've come across. They were 2 very talented entrepreneurs who went through our startup accelerator on at King's a couple of years back. And the idea is for people who are not video editing professionals who can upload content, and they have this kind of drag and drop, super easy to use design tools, which can help you make a promo video in even 30 minutes or less. And what's great is that the founders have actually given you guys a 3-day VIP code, which is 3-day VIP, which lets you have a free account for 3 days. That means there's no commitment before you sign up. And then I think if you do sign up for the monthly subscription, something like £15 a month, which I think is a really cost-effective solution. But it's a great tool if you're looking to do what Dropbox did and build a promo video to push out to people so they can basically learn about what you are doing, and then you can actually tag or include that video on, let's say, an Instagram ad or a Facebook ad, Twitter ad, and use that to drive traffic to your landing page, where they can then add your email address, add their email address, so you can start building that contact database. So it lets you add subtitles, change filters, and add music. So on this slide, I've actually included a link to a royalty-free music site called Ben Sounds. There's tons of them out there, but that's just one of them that you can use. And this is for you guys to explore. It's a really, really powerful tool. And again, it just means that very quickly you can bring to life what you're doing in this MVP context, so you can test and learn from your users. A really interesting way to run tests for your MVPs is by putting a little bit of money behind PPC, or pay per click advertising, which is through Facebook, Instagram, etc. Because what that means is you can run an ad campaign even for a product or service that doesn't exist yet, and start capturing data about the impact of that campaign. So you create your company Facebook page, you open a Facebook ad manager account, and you can, let's say, put £20, doesn't have to be a large amount, behind a Facebook ad where you include your video from Veed, or a link to your Marvel app, clickable prototype, and you see how many impressions you get from that ad, from what demographics, who is actually clicking through or interacting with that ad, and most of all, how many conversions do you get. So a great conversion point would be, of those people who click through on the ad, how many of those gave you their email address to be a prospective customer for your product. And so very quickly you can run an ad for 24 hours. Very quickly you can actually create and capture super powerful metrics. Okay. Okay, so it's a very whistle-stop tour through MVPs, and before we finished, I wanted to kind of close the loop on what happens next. So we've talked about 3 different ways of bringing to life your ideas: through app design, through a landing page, and through a promo video. And next, you want to create this community. I cannot stress enough how important it is that you have an active and engaged community before your product goes public, to learn from, to engage, and kind of nurture as your potential customer base. As an example, at King's, we worked with a product called Sketch Focus, which was basically a design tool for Sketch, which is a kind of design tool. And they created a Slack community that had 200 designers on it, so that every time they did a product release of their tool, they'd be like, hey guys, here's this new release that we're doing. What do you think? Can you give feedback? Can you upvote? Can you tell us how we can improve it? And they created this community because they were also giving something of value to that community. So design tools, recommendations, cool blogs, cool events they could be attending. And so they built this customer loyalty while also being able to test and learn from their prospective user base. So the emails that you've been capturing into your CRM, into that database that I showed you at the beginning of the workshop, you can do a whole bunch of stuff with that database. You can send out a newsletter with curated content or events. You could set up a community like the one I just mentioned using a platform like Slack, Discord, WhatsApp, LinkedIn groups, Facebook groups, whatever it is, for like-minded people to share valuable content and ideas and nurture that customer base, and also do something, the equivalent thing using social. Insta, Facebook, Pinterest is something I'm using a lot more of, depending on who your customers are and what communities they are typically part of. And now the really exciting part, which is how you go about launching your product. So by this point, you have built and tested, hopefully, a whole series of different MVPs. I would argue that one MVP is not enough. Try out a whole bunch of different MVPs. The 3 that we've talked about today, a Facebook campaign, a Slack community, whatever it is. And now you feel ready to launch something out to the public. The number one piece of advice I would give you is to ship small. So to launch to only a very small group of customers, because the first thing that will happen with your first release is that something will definitely go wrong. So the soft launch reduces the risk. Then when you have a product that feels ready to release, you start building hype. So I'm sure most of you will have seen on social, with a product release, there might be like a countdown 10 days before the release. It might be, pushing out different memes or GIFs on social media, but also getting press. So engaging journalists to write about your upcoming product. If you haven't worked in PR in the past, I'd definitely recommend a good Google search on how to effectively pitch journalists, because it's super hard to get free PR, and there's a real art to impressing journalists and getting them excited about what you're doing. The next is Product Hunt. So Product Hunt, I showed you earlier, it's a great place to engage people and kind of get your product out into the open and get people interacting with it, giving reviews, upvoting, so you could actually get your product trending before it's even out there. Another great way to bring to life your product is actually running events. You can often run events for pretty cheap, and it's a great way of bringing to life your value proposition in a form of kind of experiential marketing. So at the moment, in my company, we're doing a whole ton of webinars. We're running hackathons where young kids are actually building like social impact products or video games or designing art using Python coding language. And we run these for free to bring to life what our main product is, which is like online courses for kids. So we can run that very quickly and cheaply, even before we've launched our product. Then the last 2 are slightly more self-explanatory. So you can run paid ads to support the launch of your product. If you don't have experience in digital marketing and pay-per-click, definitely do your research before using these platforms, because they can end up costing you a lot of money, and there's a real art to making those ads as successful as possible. And then the last is about referrals. So you already have this engaged, active community. Why not use them to exponentially grow the reach of your product? So that's why apps like Uber, Deliveroo, etc. pay you to refer them on to your friends, because it's actually a very cheap and often very effective way to grow the reach of your product. Okay, so we're now at 5 to 6. Super fast-paced tour through MVPs and product launches, etc. I'm going to pause now to answer any questions that have been coming through. Someone has asked what was the CRM tool that I mentioned. So if you look at the slides I've been using, which I'm going to post in the chat now, you can see it's just like a Google Sheet that I've designed for you guys to use. That basically means you'd have to pay money for a tool like HubSpot or Pipedrive or Copper CRM or any of the innumerable options out there. A question, can we run a launch event during lockdown? Great question. Lockdown is very challenging, but it's also a great opportunity to be creative. So if you are running, if you're launching a product again around mental health, you might want to find some interesting panelists or speakers and kind of do like a panel webinar where you get insights from thought leaders or industry leaders around your space, and then you engage potential customers by signing them up to an Eventbrite, which is GDPR compliant, which helps build your customer database. Mikhail says memes are an important driver. That is 100% true. Any other questions? Eduardo's asked, how could you make money with a student's social app? So this is a question about business models. We're not going to have time to talk about business models today, but do have a look at stuff that is out there and think about how they make money. So apps might make money through being freemium, so having like paid subscriptions, but actually only a small percentage of your customers will probably convert to paid. But you might want to think about the data it creates that you can monetize, or advertising, in-app purchases. There's a whole bunch of different ways to make money through applications. A rough timeline from getting customer emails to soft launch to big launch, etc. It's an important question, but it's a very difficult one to answer because it really depends on whether you're developing some deep tech AI or pharmaceuticals, or it might just be, a services company. So it really depends on the product. But you really need fundamentally at this stage to understand the feedback you're getting from your MVPs to know when you're ready to launch. Because if you cannot be sure that the idea that you've developed is validated, i.e. really serving the needs of your customers, then you're just not ready to launch. The second kind of assessment point should be how big is my audience to launch to? If you've got 7 friends signed up on your CRM with their emails and you launch to them, it's not going to go very far, right? But if through all of the stages we've been through so far, you've signed up 100, 500, 5,000 people as potential users, then suddenly you have this captive audience. So think about how many people you want to launch to and how you can, before that launch, basically start building that community. Stephen asks about, what about social enterprise? Perhaps if you could give a little bit more information behind your question, that would help. What if your project requires a lot of technological background? So that is a question from Babatunde. I would really argue that even the most complex, let's say, AI product, you can still build very quick MVPs. So for example, a friend of mine has built an extraordinary cancer diagnostics company called Panakia, which is using computer vision to assess biopsy samples, see if there are cancerous cells in there. But they could have tested whether doctors, oncologists, GPs, etc., were interested in this platform way before they had data sets and the appropriate machine learning algorithms through the kind of stuff we've been talking about today. So promo videos, potentially running events with stakeholders from the NHS. There's a whole bunch of ways you can start testing stuff. How much traction, when do you think it's ready to launch with PR? Again, this really depends on your business. You will get a sense of when you feel ready to launch, whether it's 100 users, 1,000, 10,000, really depends on your product. But the most important thing is to get out and start basically testing and getting feedback on your ideas as much as possible. Abigail asks, is it necessary to have a website after creating a landing page? The landing page is your like rough and ready kind of version 1 to start testing your idea. Once you feel established, you definitely need a website, but you definitely don't need to pay someone to help you build that. You can use Wix.com, you can use Squarespace. and the subscription plus hosting comes to something like 15 quid a month, and you can build websites in a matter of hours super quickly. So yeah. Williams asked about the difference between promoting your service B2B and B2C. So how in particular can you test your ideas to a B2B audience? Really good question. A lot of the examples we've gone through today are kind of direct to consumer or B2C models. With B2B, the same MVP tools can often apply, but the distribution channels are often different. So what B2B customers often really respond well to are PR and events. So let's say I was building a social media platform for CSR and impact projects. You know, I could test that by running a series of events about the future of communications in the CSR space, and invite CSR managers from corporates from across the world, have a panel event, and get people to interact with basically my hypothesis even before the product exists. And then also thought leadership and PR. So industry commentary, research reports are a really great way to engage B2B customers. And a great way to do that is to develop your own kind of proprietary research, if you can, if you have the kind of resources and networks available, and then you can put that on LinkedIn and make it what's called a lead magnet. So you actually put a PDF version of the report on LinkedIn, and you can only access it if you give your email address over, and then you can, you know, put some paid marketing behind that post on LinkedIn and see how many people who are, let's say, a CSR manager are downloading your research report. So that's a great way to test in the B2B space. Any advice pitching for the Mayor of London with an MVP, justified traction and numbers? So this is a great question about how you evidence validation. We often think in the startup space that it's the idea that's important. No one really knows whether an idea is going to be successful until you can prove it. So that's where the traction data really comes in. So great data is to be able to say, let's say we ran a Facebook ad for 3 days, and on the back of that, you know, we had 1,200 click-throughs and we had 97 people sign up to become potential customers, which was a conversion of 5%. Wow. Okay, awesome. There's definitely people out there who are interested in this product. So basically developing the data that really proves that there is demand for your product out there. So we are now past 6 o'clock. So before we finish, I'm just going to share a couple of things with you guys. So startups are hard, but it's also kind of the best time in history to be an entrepreneur, because there's so much stuff out there to help you in the process. So over the last few years, I've been compiling a whole bunch of resources and tools to help people like you develop their startups. And I'm going to post it here. And this is guides to everything from like pricing to business models to branding to digital marketing to financial modeling, all sorts of stuff. So that is for you guys to use. And the last thing I'm going to say is, if you want to connect and you have any questions or any follow-up thoughts, I'm also going to put, paste a link to my LinkedIn. Once it loads. Yeah, and feel free to add me on there, and we can carry on the conversation. All right, we're going to finish there, but guys, thanks so much for your engagement, for all of your great questions. I can't wait to see how your ideas develop and who comes through to the semi-finals of this year's Mayor's Entrepreneur Award. So yeah, best of luck and take care. All right, ciao.